One. Good evening. I'm Dharmendra Gordon. Welcome to all of you that are here and those of you that will watch the YouTube and Facebook recording later. This is Vegan Synergy Meditation meeting number 27. And this is our life code for this evening. I'm going to lead us in a little bit into a relaxed state of meditation, and then I will talk about in detail this life code. And then we'll all get into sharing the shadow, the gift, and the Siddha, each individually. So if everybody could just take a moment to release anything that's keeping you from being here now, whether that's becoming aware of the tension in your body or the noise in your head, or any kind of vibrations or movements or sensations in your body, or any sounds going on around you. Just allow yourself to come back to your senses, and just in being in your senses, just sense yourself and sense your environment that you're in, and just feel the environment you're in supporting you for the next couple of hours to go deep into this voyage through the 16th life code. And the theme of the 16th life code is inborn capacity. Written into our genetic code are the very patterns upon which all life is built. And as a result, we inherit the capacity of the life force to create, maintain, and evolve all manner of opportunities to support our lifestyle. And it is through this life code, as we learn to decipher its contents, that we are able to unleash that innate potential into viable skills by almost instinctively matching the right pattern with corresponding area of application. This is a rather amazing ability, if you think about it, that we can tap into the skill set utilized by the life force through some kind of unknown method of transmission to align a whole sequence of activities to produce a result that is in harmony with our aims and intentions. To discover our inborn capacity, we need only to become still and silent and relax into our nature without judgment or expectation. And with patience, we wait for all the noise to subside as we attune to the wavelength of that which is our unique sacred geometry and the trajectory of our light signature that is woven into our genetic code, literally. At the shadow level of this life code, we miss out on all that magical array of our unique design, as our attention has become greatly attenuated due to the myriad distractions vying for our attention in the modern world, and the fact that we haven't been trained to hold our attention for very long on anything. It is for this reason that most of humanity remains totally indifferent to the gifts that lie dormant inside of them. Through wrong training, children are forced into the cookie-cutter curriculum of the modern so-called education system, where instead of being exposed to an environment designed to support the discovery of their natural inclinations and abilities, they're forced into these narrow grooves of specialized knowledge with very little or no tolerance for variations in how the information is presented, and no possibility to adapt the curriculum to other styles of learning than the one being sustained. To be trained to be indifferent to your own capacity to learn and the unique approach you could develop in doing so is the unavoidable side effect of the modern system of indoctrination into the current version of mind control that passes for education, being enforced and propagated by the ruling establishment. Many humans pass through their whole life just doing what they're told and never looking beyond the walls of the box they don't even know they're in, made up of rules and regulations of how life is supposed to be and how to learn what you need to learn in order to support all this. And some people come to be highly skilled in various areas of this established system and are what is often referred to as experts, and whatever they say is considered to be the final statement in their particular field. And unknowingly, these experts become the perfect puppets for establishing the various aims and objectives of the ruling elite. And because they are recompensed quite well for this little service of theirs, they tend as a class never to look beyond the surface of this cozy little lifestyle that is being provided for them. At the gift level, this life code supports the diversification of one's skill set into areas of application outside the narrow range for which one was acknowledged by the status quo. Natural ability is when one develops the capacity of learning how to learn. So the true talent is the discovery of that which allows one to align with the skill building ability that exists within the genetic structure of all humans as a gift from the universal life force. The magic lies in the fact that when one faces a challenge, the very energy needed to activate the patterns that will be needed to respond to that challenge are contained in the challenge itself. The essence of learning how to learn is what natural ability is all about, and it is unique for each individual and is developed by becoming one with whatever skill is being practiced. The dancer becomes the dance. The artist dissolves into his art. The actor becomes completely one with the character. The orator becomes the oration. The skill becomes miraculously impressed into and becomes part of the genetic makeup, and through reproduction becomes the rightful inheritance of the children, but can also be passed on through what used to be called guilds and is now called trades. The amazing thing about learning in this way is that through being total in the giving of all of one's energy into the acquiring of the skill, it becomes a permanent part of one's genetic makeup, as it has penetrated into the essential, where anything once learned can never be forgotten. Through the Siddha, the skill has been mastered, as it has become part of the cellular nature after 7 years of sustained and continuous development. There is an essential thread that runs through the skill as it is grounded into those very cells that bring out the sacred geometry of the genetic intelligence that is designed in such a way that it reflects a corresponding pattern found in nature, functioning simultaneously on many different levels and scales of expression. That is why when a skill has been mastered, which is another way of saying it has become second nature, the essential pattern upon which that skill is built becomes available to build other skills into true talents. Out of deep immersion and total abandon into an activity, the underlying essential thread becomes woven into the genetic structure as a creative adaptation of the pattern as it is found in nature. This is the operational identity behind what is meant by the term fractal holographic universe. The pattern as it is found in nature and sustained by the universal life force is the basis of the arising for the term hologram, as every pattern is a hologram. The word fractal implies the repetition of that pattern on different scales and producing different results. At the level of mastery, since one is literally in touch with the essential thread of the patterning influence that runs through the genes, it starts becoming apparent through diverse sources as variations on a theme. Learning how to learn here at the level of the Siddha takes on a new meaning as one is in a process of continuous discovery of an essential thread that runs through and serves to connect phenomena occurring on many different scales and in diverse areas of application. And this is how the universe recreates itself continuously, as it is the pattern behind all patterns, in a never-ending revelation of the expansion of its possibilities through every new form it finds to express itself. And this is where all true mastery originates, and that is from the first and original teacher, whose acts become the pattern upon which the universe was built. That universe in which all of life exists is the same essential pattern that was used to fashion the human form. Bringing out and developing a skill to the point of mastery as a true talent is the most direct way to be in synchronicity with the whole. And in that synchronicity, the keys that unlock the pattern are transferred. All right, so I will start this evening by moving into the shadow, which is diffusion of attention, which leads to indifference, meaning not really appreciating what you have to offer. Um, I, for this one, I kind of go back into the training of my whole life and seeing so much how others, even with the best of intentions, were always intent upon teaching me things in a certain way um, that impressed upon me that there was a right way and that there was a wrong way. And so the idea was fostered into me that I have to do it a certain way. And that led me to become somebody who was always trying to impress others with the way I learned something. And as a result, the kind of attention that could have been developed in me had I followed my own natural inclinations would have taken me in a different direction. But what happened is, and it took me a long time to find this out, is like everybody else in the world, I joined the human race and fell completely asleep in my diffused attention with very little ability to hold my focus of concentration on anything for very long, except to keep reminding myself to do whatever it was I was trained to do in my life by others. So I became very good at being indifferent to and non-reactive to those urges inside of me that were trying to tell me that, you know, to give me signals about how to go about it in my own way. So in a sense, it was kind of like, and it just seems to be pervasive throughout the educational systems and in the way our conditioning operates through our parents and all our elders to constantly show us the right way, and this is how it's done. And it really stifles our intelligence. And again, it's that diffusion of attention in a place where we need attention. Um, and then we don't get nourished in our natural abilities. And it leads to all kinds of things later on in life, like low self-esteem, no confidence, um, being cowardly, and many other things that result from not being in touch with a place in us that makes us feel real and who we are. And so for me, that is the way I'm relating to this. Is a big one because it's the gate of skills, and it's about how we pick up skills in life, and especially how we pick up the skill of being ourselves. And that's something that I had to learn later on in life all by myself. And I went off to India at 21 and found somebody who knew how to share that with people. So I was very fortunate. But until that point, I was very much a very miserable, depressed young man who saw no hope or anything in the world in the way it was. And I didn't understand, but as I've just shared with everybody, the reason why was because I was simply just not supported, and it wasn't anybody's fault, it's just the way things are set up. I wasn't taught or guided or led to follow my inner feel, my inner knowing, my inner voice, or anything that could have led me in a different direction until later in my life. So, yeah, and then, and if I bring that into the present now, there are, and it's kind of quickly dissolving, but even up until the last few years, there was a lot of struggle with confidence and self-esteem, standing in my shoes and sharing this particular style of awakening is the way I'll put it. And that's and even though that's starting to get into the gift and even the Siddha, it's okay. I mean, I can kind of link it there just for a moment. So yeah, so that's kind of the black hole I fell into through my conditioning and being taught to discount my talents and not to pay attention to them and be indifferent to them and not focus my attention. So that's my shadow of the innate ability. Life code.
So you're using indifference as the scattering of your talent or your energy or something, and as opposed to, or I mean, you're using diffusion as opposed to indifference.
Right, because indifference is in this particular case, it means not being, not having the predisposition to focus your attention on you and your unique skills. So when you're taught to focus on things that other people tell you are right and that you should do as opposed to what's really right for you according to you, then it has the effect of shunting your ability to hold your attention, because you're not
Scattering your energy.
yeah, because you're not focusing on the source of attention, which is you. You're focusing on somebody else's idea, and there's no source of attention there. There's just, I got to follow this rule. And you're not growing attention, you're using up your attention, you're wasting your attention on somebody else's opinion. Mm-hmm. And so when you bring it back to you, then you naturally, because essence and grows through attention, and then essence creates more attention. So it's a mutually reinforcing thing when you eventually get to your gift. But at this level, it's the effect of indifference is diffusion of attention. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, diffusion. Okay.
Yeah, Here, I'll bring it up just for a moment more. This PowerPoint here and there, like I said, I was going to do it while I shared mine, but I'll do it while you share yours. I'm assuming you want to go next. I don't know, but you can see it there. This is the.
Yeah, I like to look at it kind of like to ponder, because beforehand, yeah, because I can't really, like, when you say that whole thing, I'm like, oh wait, did he say the Siddha? Like, when did he say the Siddha? Like, I kind of I thought you were still on the gift when you were on the Siddha, so I got a little bit confused.
Yeah.
And then I'm also like, well, I understand that the inborn capacity, but what's what? So it's good to see diffusion, natural ability, the essential thread. Okay, yeah, but like, wow, what you were saying was super potent. Like, I feel like I want to hear that again or reread it again and again. But since I'm talking, I'll go first. And I'm not going to be able to read this as I talk, but I totally, please leave it up so other people can read it if they need to. I think it really helps me to see it visually. But my diffusion of attention at the shadow level when I was a kid, divorced parents at age 4 meant that it wasn't about the kids anymore. It was about the adults surviving and whatever they had to do in their fights amongst each other. And people weren't as, in my age group, people weren't as caring about what happened to the kids. It was just survival mode, raw emotion, people needing to do their business, and the parents having to do their business, and that was always the first in my family. So, I would get taken to places. There were no cell phones. I wasn't even able to go to the library. I wanted to go to the library and get books. I mean, I could have if I wanted to hike for 2 hours to get to the library and then sit in a dusty place where I go cross-eyed. But I couldn't hike like 4 hours a day just to get to the library, or 4 hours a week or whatever, because it was really far for me. So I couldn't get new books. I just didn't have media that I wanted. I asked my parents if they could buy me some books, but I was allowed to have like 1 book a month, which is not at all as much as I wanted for my ferocious hunger for information. So I would end up going places and waiting, like in waiting rooms for my mom or my brother and my dad. My brother and my dad were always together doing their thing, and then I would like follow along. And then my mom was always busy trying to survive, so I had to follow her busy thing as a single mother. And so I would just get stuck as a kid, kind of like staring at walls and doing a lot of waiting, a lot of just waiting. So I ended up having this I literally like stared at walls. Okay, at the doctor's office for my mom's doctor's appointment for hours on end. There's like silly music going on. I don't have a Walkman. I don't have a book. I don't have a magazine except for they have People magazine in there, but it's really boring to me. So I would literally just stare at walls, yawn, kind of go into my head and become really indifferent about my energy and what mattered for my growth and my energy. And I didn't get, because they were divorced, and the money wasn't there, I didn't get to take classes that I wanted to take or after school curriculum. So I became very like yawny, I would guess, like airy, kind of like eyes rolling back, and my eyes rolling in the back of my head. And can't wait to go somewhere so I can be by myself and live my own world rather than living someone else's that I was super bored with. So that was my childhood. And then I was always into adventure, and then we get into the gift and the illumination of that. But yeah, so my energy wasn't really focused. And so it's kind of still an energetic pain of feeling abandoned on a level of not being cared for, thought of, no one concerned to the level of my creation and what I become as a person or as a kid, as a human. So that would be my diffusion as childhood. And what it became as an adult, I would say that's more like the gift and the illumination.
Yeah, I can relate to that. That's kind of how, for me too. Cool. Okay. Evan or Nancy, do you feel like sharing anything about? I'll share it again so you can see it. I'm just going to share it at the beginning of each person's. I'll share my screen at the beginning of each person's share so that you can see what we're focusing on. But once you get going, I'm going to minimize it because I like to see people. So, but I'll do it in the beginning, and this will be good for people later when they watch the video too. So we keep coming back to this diagram, but then we also go back to the people. So, Nancy or Evan?
I'm just getting settled in here. I'm actually at a friend's taking care of her cat. She's in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on my iPad and I can't read it that well. So I'm actually switching to my computer so I can get a better look at it. And I'm really just getting settled in now. I've also just had some food delivered, and so, but I'm following along. I was just listening to the person that was speaking before, and I had a similar experience growing up. My parents, they got divorced later, but they had a horrible marriage almost the whole time, and I remember them fighting every day. And so I've lived with a lot of rejection too, and those same issues. And I suppose that is probably a big part of my shadow self, but at the same time, I also think that having that sort of rejection from the world kind of has forced me to go inside and seek, more, I guess, an internal experience of life. Maybe, I don't know. That's what it seems like. So, in that sense, there's a sense that I got this from you, like over the last couple of weeks, about, what if, things just are the way they are. And I think when I can let myself accept that instead of say it shouldn't be that way, and all of that tension and angst and anxiety that comes along with it. And it doesn't mean accepting it and being, pacifist about it, but, it letting myself feel whatever it is that I feel and let it kind of come through me and walk through it instead of get stuck in it and say it shouldn't be happening, re-victimizing myself. I see a lot of vegans do that, too, with the way things are. And so that's kind of like the Zen of zen of the shadow, the zen of dealing with the shadow, you know, and there's a sense of comfort in that too, you know, and I don't feel that I've compromised my ethics, because I think that sometimes we get angry as this because we feel that we're not in control, and like it's a way of gaining power, you know, and it can feel so overwhelming, you know, being a compassionate soul in this world and seeing through all of the illusions and the horrors of what's happening and trying to show that to other people, and they seem so impervious to it, you know. And so it's really stretched me a lot, like being, most of my life anyway, I've kind of gone off the beaten path, but I think going vegan has stretched me so much in so many ways, you know, and feeling much more deeply, caring much more deeply. And I would have considered myself a pretty caring person before, but nothing like what happened, you know, with this vegan awakening. So it's kind of bittersweet, and I was just reliving, you know, some of my memories were coming up when she was talking, and yeah, and it can be very painful, you know, it can be very painful to relive those things. And what's coming to me right now is an idea of forgiveness, and to forgive them. And you know, they say that forgiveness is for the forgiver, not necessarily the one that was doing the wrong, but you know, for me to forgive them and say, okay, they were acting out of their own ignorance and their own pain too, out of a very different world than what than I was born into. So, okay, I'm switching over to my computer now so I can read what you put up, but thank you. I certainly said a lot more than I thought I could. Because you're such a good listener. It kind of pulls it out, you know.
Well, yeah, we all, everybody gets the space here to express what, you know, what they're here to express. So I'll bring Evan said he would be joining us at the gift. He's listening in, but he's actually finishing shopping. So we're going to go ahead and go to the gift, and I'll bring the screen up again. So, because every time somebody starts, I'll bring it up just for a moment so people can see what we're talking about. So we're moving into the gift, natural ability. Hi, Shant, welcome. You found us. We're right in the stage of, we've already done the shadow. Unless you'd like to share the shadow aspect, I've got the screen up, so if you take a glance here, you can see we're just about to finish the shadow and move to the gift. But if you want to take a look at what we're working with, it's about skills, it's about building skills, and about how in our youth we're basically, a skill building ability is destroyed because people shove down our throats the right way to do things instead of allowing us to learn in our own way. So it's really hard to get in touch with our skills as we're growing up, and that's a lot where this one comes into play over the whole life. But you know, it also causes later on in life, you know, issues with compromising our abilities and confidence issues and things like that result from not having a secure foundation in ourselves and a connectedness with our own ability to handle life and develop skills in the best way we can, based on our own unique abilities. And so at the shadow level, we're looking into how it affected us, that, you know, and can still affect us now. I mean, that's also possible. So would you like to, it's up to you whether you want to just hang loose and watch as we go, or if you want to jump in and share any kind of a hit you have about the shadow of this life code of inborn capacity. Totally up to you.
Yeah, I actually have this twice in my chart, you know, going into gene keys from the framework gene keys. I have this twice.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the word is like indifference, and I kind of have a challenge with the whole how I read it, because because like, you know, it's indifference, versatility, and mastery, and those just feel so vague or broad to me that I just don't even know where to begin. It's kind of like, you know, the diffusion of attention, and just I experienced that challenge of just having all of it, the diffusion. So I can relate, and I appreciate that additional kind of definition to it, and trying to zero in on what it is actually that is the gift or the capacity to that, you know, that's within. So
yeah, okay, cool. So, and Evan, I guess you're not back yet, so I guess we'll step into.
Actually, I have a moment here to just share a little bit of my own indifference that I've experienced.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that I've gone through this weird kind of transition of where when I was younger, I was kind of encouraged to pursue the arts and performance. And as I got older, I sensed that support kind of slowly start to fall away. And the adult figures in my life became less and less supportive of that because they wanted to see me starting to get more serious, I suppose. And yeah, and because that, it's kind of created this weird indifference around my art and my own skills that I've developed over a while. And yeah, sometimes it's really easy to forget like how many hours have gone into me developing these skills that make my experience of life just more joyful. And I think I can oftentimes have this sort of indifferent, underappreciative feeling towards them. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Evan. That was nice. And so, just a final note in this shadow of inborn capacity. And yeah, I do. The reason I call it life codes is I do try to zero in on exactly what is the essence of the shadow, the gift, and the siddha at each stage, and give it a kind of a way of naming it so people can feel it and get in touch with it. I mean, you could use really good words, but they may not be the best words for people to really feel what you're talking about. So when I use diffusion of attention, it's like this. It's like I'm a child and I'm doing something and I'm learning how to do that thing all by myself. And then a grown-up comes in and said, oh, you should try this. And they slam their energy in there and they get me to do it their way. But what I find in myself on a feeling level is like I'm up against a wall and my attention is just flattened out and it's not receptive or centered or anything. And it's like the feeling inside is I want to be anywhere but here right now. I do not want this. I don't know why it's happening to me. And I have no choice because these people, support my survival, my parents or whatever. And so I just have to kind of receive that. But at the same time, that's what I mean by diffusion of attention. It's like, and then and the indifference is just kind of inculcated. It's not intentional that you're indifferent to that beautiful ability you were developing on your own, but you're taught to just immediately, completely diffuse your attention so that it can't really be collected and really, because you need a focus of attention to develop your gifts, to develop and grow your essence through the things you do in your life. So obviously the indifference is just this inculcated thing that occurs as a result of being invaded by another person's energy about how to do something the right way. And then you kind of go into, I don't want to be here. I'd rather anywhere but here, but I have to be here. So I'll just, with this diffused attention, I'll kind of create this false self that's going to actually figure this out or whatever. So it's kind of a strange thing. And I just kind of want to sum it up in that way because I'm remembering now what it was like when people would come up and shove their idea of how I should learn down my throat and how I felt energetically, like anywhere but here, thank you, don't want that, but really have to deal with it because you're much bigger and stronger and you support my survival. So I guess it's, you know, and that's how it is when you're a kid. It's like it's your very survival. So you feel like you have to do these things. And that kind of sucks, but that's just, you know, it's just kind of the world we live in. And now we'll shift into, after that little synopsis, we'll shift into the gifts. And yes, in the gene keys, it's called versatility. I call it natural ability because that is what it actually is. The versatility is an ability that arises out of tapping into your natural ability. And so as I grew older and became an adult and had control of my life to the sense of my movement in it, where I could go, who I could meet with and stuff, I very quickly left my family, left this country, went to other countries and started to discover, especially India, about meditation and things, and went in and joined, you know, places where you learned to follow your own unique abilities by literally allowing it to come out of a meditative space. Years later, I found out that meditation is the thing that clears away obstacles that have been placed in you by your conditioning and allows you to come back into and rest in your essential self, who you truly are. And then as you engage life, your attention is no longer diffused, it's very present. And in that presence, your essence is naturally able to start to cope with life in a totally different way that allows you to discover the process of engaging and activating your genetics to bring forth whatever's been put in you from your whole lineage of genetics, of your genealogy. And because once you become centered and present, all of that which is in there is going to start coming out, and you're going to start finding your natural abilities. And it's not just going to be one ability. It's like every dimension of your life, from cleaning a house to the kind of work you do, to how you relate with your friends, to how you relate to causes in the world, to how you treat animals, to, and on and on and on. And all of those places are now going to have your response, my response coming out. I'm speaking as if I'm speaking to you, but I'm actually, this is actually how I discovered it. And because one of my abilities is to be a leader. That's my life's work is to be a leader of a new kind, of a kind that works with the collective, not like the old tribal leaders who were like the kings, but more out of being a role model and showing, just by being so clear in what I present and how I stand behind it, that other people would like to learn about it and also stand behind themselves and see how that feels for them too. So that's one of my natural abilities. So I'm giving an actual example of one that I use very much in these meetings and that I'm sharing very much these days is an ability like that. But at that point, when I was able to be very far away from my conditioning in another country with a group of people, and I'm talking like a couple thousand people in a meditation, institute in India, that were all focused on not only deepening their awareness through meditation, but also sharing their energy in this place and doing different work, all donating your time and your energy to keep this place afloat. So some of us would learn cooking and be meditative at that. Some would learn cleaning. Some would work in an administrative capacity. Whatever it took, because it was a big operation. And so there were every facet that there is in the world to do was in this place. So it was literally a hotbed of how to discover your natural abilities. And I'm talking about Osho, whose name was Rajneesh back in the old days, but we called him Osho in the end. And very famous and according to a lot of false news media that blow up the wrong side of things, notorious character, but actually a Buddha, a fully enlightened being like Buddha or Christ or any other being that we consider of that caliber. He was of that caliber. And so I felt very fortunate. And my natural abilities just flowered there, and that anything I stepped into, it was so easy to get in touch with the skill that was needed, and there was so much support to do it. So I hope that what I just shared can kind of create a nice climate for all of us to kind of relate to our natural ability and how that might come about. So I'm going to go on mute now. Stop that for a moment.
I'll go next. This is Aurora, and yeah. Oh, I was so there for a moment. Let me see if I can get back there. Natural ability, versatility. I was always very physical and very connected to my body since I was a child. So that's like my natural ability is very musical, very movement, very physical, very like I can hold a beat really easily on a drum. Like I can play an instrument as if I've played it for, months on end the first time. A lot of times I've done things the first time I've done it, I've won people at games. I just remember I played Tekken, and I didn't even know what the buttons were, and I was just pressing a bunch of buttons, and I beat experts that have been playing for years on end, and that same thing with like pool. The first time I played pool, I beat the people because I was just learning. And also like I've found myself learning capoeira, and then I'm suddenly the guy's teaching me capoeira, and then we're getting into it on the lawn, and then I'm suddenly doing a flip that I've never done in just because I'm in flow, and I have no idea how I did it, and I could not repeat it again. And the guy's even asking me, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. So it's like I can get into this kind of channel flow kind of experience. That's my natural ability. But I would also say, from definitely like the indifference or the diffusion mode of the shadow, is my parents are Dutch. So it's a very independent country, and they're all about people being adventurous. So even though my parents were independent doing their own thing, and then it was in the end I was doing my own thing as well. I just couldn't supply myself with books or something like that I wanted, or I didn't know how to supply myself, or they didn't supply me. So I ended up being very internal as well, and having like internal adventures in my mind. And so it ended up being that I ended up being a designer. Like I would just stay up at night thinking about creating this and creating that. And when I did have free time in my childhood, we always had great houses to live when we were there, and I had like blocks or cars or dolls, and I would pick up and find all kinds of random articles and make these huge experiences for them. And it's like I was an architect. My mom always thought I would be an architect because I was always building for the dolls or for the cars. But once I built it, I actually like played for like 5 minutes, and then I was bored. I was just more into building these things and designing these experiences for them. So I ended up doing that in my work career because I'm very natural at pattern recognition, which is one kind of intelligence. I always beat my brother who's very intelligent at the match game, but I could never beat him at poker or any of the strategy games. I would always beat him at the match game because I could memorize patterns very easily. So that goes with the architecture and the design, and also the channeling. And so like even staring at the walls, this process of staring at the walls, because I didn't have books, had me go deep into my imagination and subconscious realms at an early age. And using that space. So it ended up being a gift from the freedom and the parents who didn't, escort me into the classes I wanted to. It just ended up having like the whole world as a playground of potential. It also might have given me a concussion or two because I wanted to do gymnastics. And so I would just flip myself around pretending like I knew when I really didn't. And I would bang my head a lot. And that might be why I have scoliosis. That's one of the ideas. So yeah, just And then when I go deep into the meditation space, I really feel the patterns and see them on very deep levels, and it's very beautiful to experience and know, and also now design potential systems for healing and coming into deeper conscious levels. Thank you. I am complete.
There's some nice stuff you related to there. It's all about patterns. It's about this is the very ability to take patterns and adapt them to life, and literally to translate the way the universal life force structures patterns through everything it does through our genetic code, and then bring it out into our action in ways that produces results. So that's really patterns is definitely the well. We'll get there to the Siddha. I'll leave the depth of pattern for that. So who would like to go next? And thank you, Denise.
Good time to put the information up just so people can read. But it looks like Shant was about to go. Sorry, Shant.
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, I feel like my natural ability has been to be very adaptable, and I've always held this belief that I can do anything, just and it usually comes out context based, or I can adapt and find the just the
You're on mute, Shant.
Oh, was I on mute the whole time?
You said adaptable, and then it went mute.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's about being adaptable. I found there's a sense that I can do anything or whatever I put my mind to, and based on the context, and be adaptable in that way. And there's the blessing of that, which is that can happen as I do it. But then there's also the challenge of it, which is then what are you focusing on, or what are you zeroing on as like what you do is your life thing. So yeah, being context based, like I would often refer to myself like with like a chameleon like type of thing, and like kind of like catering or being open to helping others and in identifying where the needs might be, and being able to fulfill that. And so yeah, it's just a weird, I don't know what more to say. That's just kind of like the space of what where I feel to be in that that gift.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's what I'm looking for more is that there's a certain frequency, and you touched it, and that's all. It just lights up the heart, and you get a sense of a yes. Then I know we're in the gift. It's just the opposite, like with the shadow. When somebody really hits the shadow, you go, oh my God. You really feel it, and so that's all. We're looking for the hitting the note, so you get the hits, and so you got the notes. Like when I first started this this group, this meeting group back in December of last year, sometimes people could just come up with because it was so new to people and so unusual. They sometimes just would come up with a word, like and that, but they hit the note, and so it was enough. So what's more important than the words? Even though the words, if you can express the words, great, because then you can really create a nice table with lots of goodies on it for people to feast on as you share your gift. But if you just say if you just tap into the that core essence of whatever it is we're discussing, and you can convey it in a sentence or two, that's all. And so I want to say that for everybody out there too. It's not like you have to have a complete comprehensive expression mastery of each thing. You have to, what's more important is that you tap into the essence of whatever it is, the shadow, the gift of Siddha, and you just allow that to course through you, and whatever comes out, comes out. So thank you, Sean.
I'll share a little bit of what I've experienced. So yeah, I've really connected with what everyone's had to say on the gift level so far. And I've noticed where in my life I've noticed my versatility coming into play has been my ability to accept essentially any behavior of anybody. And kind of just like accept that, not necessarily agree with it, but accept it and come to peace with it. And I think that's created a lot of peace in my life. It's also created problems for myself, because it also means that I have to use like discernment to tell, like, am I enabling myself to make poor choices just by accepting myself for who I am? So it's really only when it comes to my own self where that sort of like kind of radical acceptance gets a little trickier. But I think it makes for, I don't know, it's made my life feel a lot lighter at times, is when I kind of settle into that part of myself, because I know that is definitely a part of my personality, and it's something that I love doing, and I've realized that it's bringing me closer to love in general, is when I am just accepting of the people in my life for their indifference, perhaps, and sometimes that can be really helpful, and for moving on from like my own personal indifference to the indifference of like my parents per se, when it comes to music, and kind of just accepting that, okay, they're at where they're at, and that's okay, and then also being like almost equally as accepting when they are supportive. Yeah, I think that's how versatility applies for me.
Thank you, Evan. That was very experiential into just a sense of acceptance, which is the root of entering into who you are and discovering what you're about and bringing your gifts out. So I thought that was well expressed. So, thank you. Let's see, I believe, Nancy, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share? I highlighted where we're at right now. You can see it on the screen. Do you have any thoughts about, or anything you'd like to share about how you discovered and came into, because you have quite a natural ability. I know you create beautiful vegan food, so I know that's a gift right there.
No,
So,
I don't really, I mean, I could, I suppose, but my advocacy in vegan is to more educate, and things like that. And like I'm gearing up to for this plant-powered meat month. It's an online promotion that restaurants um, join up, and then they're featured on their website. And I'm doing a lot of social media outreach because I think that's really a key, a vital way that, like the only way that we're going to end up, if possible, ending animal agriculture is replacing it with plant-based meats and cheeses and dairy. And that's the quickest way anyway. So that's really mostly what I do. I present really good vegan food to people. I anyway, but no, I'd like to read over the gift and listen a little bit more to other people before I say any more. Ah, there it is. Thanks.
You're on mute, Dharmendra.
Yeah, everybody else has already shared the gift at this point, so that's why I was offering it to you. If there's something, because what we're looking at here is at the level of the gift is if we bring, how to say it, like I used to do in our in some of the earlier meetings, if you take that diffusion of attention, which is literally the atmosphere of the planet, everybody's attention's diffused, everybody's distracted, everybody's not really centered in the moment and present with their full awareness in any experience that's going on with them. And so that's the world vibration out of which we're trying to figure out how to figure our life out and what skills we need to bring to our life to make our life a viable and enjoyable and prosperous venture for us. And so at a certain point, we discover that we can take that diffusion of attention and the state it brings up and bring it into our heart. And so just maybe just a little reminder of how we get from the shadow to the gift is we take the experience that the shadow is creating in us, what diffusion of attention just feels like it's very hard to be present. The solar plexus feels very uncomfortable, kind of cold instead of warm and connected to everything in the feeling level. It's more like gapped from it. And then, but once we come into the heart and we kind of embrace that place in ourselves, we discover first of all, our first natural real ability is to love ourselves. So that might be a good place to orient for anybody who would like to actually practice the sequence from Shadow Gift Siddha of this life code, is to realize that the most basic natural ability we have is to love. And we start with ourselves. So I guess what I'm saying, or in the case with you, Nancy, is that how in your life experience do you move from that place of not even really being aware of your own true gifts, but then as you feel being out of touch with yourself and bring it into your heart, what does that elicit in you? Because as you start to zero in on your heart and you find that you have an ability to love yourself, that's going to nurture certain skills in you. And it's real simple. The minute you do it, you'll go, oh, I know what I want to do, or something along those lines. That's kind of the atmosphere that we're working in here. Behind the scenes, that's what's going on behind the scenes, that where we're filling it in with all of us with our stories of how we go about that.
It seems for me that what's coming to my mind is like crisis management that gets me creative and going. And the only thing I can think of now is, the vegan advocacy and all that entails and all that means, and seeing that something just so desperately needs to be done that it's kind of just pushes me out past my comfort zone and just wanting to be a bearer of love and clarity in the world. I think they so desperately need that. Well, it's really changed for me because in the early days when I first went vegan, I was, out there just rattling everything off and trying to, make people go vegan and talk about the horrors all the time and everything, and it didn't really work. And it was shocking, I think it's shocking to think that well, here's the solution, here's something horrible, and here's a solution, and people just don't get it. So that's one way that I've had to really be stretched to say, instead of just say, well, they should get it, people should be, like, things should be different, like, well, that's information. Like, okay, if people are not responding to what they think they should respond to, then what will they respond to? And what's important to them, and how can we, build bridges and help people cross over into this beautiful world? And a really key thing, is just opening hearts, coming to people with an open heart and sincerity and clarity, and sharing that, and instead of telling them that they're wrong and they're bad. And yeah, because it really, people need their hearts opened. And so that's changed for me a lot, and that's why I do what I do. And I think there are some vegans that I was called a dietary vegan, like a big insult, And I guess I can understand why somebody might think that, but I feel that what I'm doing is the result of, at this point, years of trial and error, and using critical thinking, and just listening and observing to people, and understanding, behavior change and what motivates people to make the food choices that they make. And it's pretty profound realizations that have led me to do what I'm doing now, because I'm convinced that animal, as has been earlier, animal products have to be replaced, just like people used to depend on horses to get around, and then cars were invented, and that's what changed it. No amount of animal liberation would have freed the horses. They had to have it replaced. And it's the same thing with food. We have to replace things and present something better. And people aren't going to change by yelling at them and shaming them and making them feel badly. It's temporary at best. So it's quite a challenge that we have, before us. I don't know if I even answered the question.
I think you're doing a brilliant job. You're bringing out, you're bringing out and sharing your natural ability. That's the point. You don't. I mean, I tend to function a lot not only in sharing whatever my content is with whatever we're moving through, but also to give an explanation and a structure to what we're doing, so people watching and all of us subtly can have something that we can rest on and maneuver in. That makes sense to us, and it has, but you're doing beautiful. I'm really enjoying it. You're bringing it out really well. I mean, that's exactly how you literally feels like you're going into and literally discovering your gift as you're saying it, rediscovering it, I guess you could say, but with new meanings and new layers to it that you're opening up right now because of the meditative space we create when we do these meetings. So yeah, beautiful, bravo.
I really look forward to these meetings. They're like a beacon of light, every week.
Yeah, that's what they're for. I mean, I originally created these, and I'll bring this back up so we can head into the Siddha now, but in a minute, I'll bring this up so people can start tuning into that. But I originally brought this up for vegans because it was created out of Vegan World 2026, which is the platform that I'm using here to do this, that comes out of Climate Healers. So ultimately, it's about healing the climate. And just so everybody's clear about that. So what I want to say to open up the Siddha and the essential thread is I'm going to speak about what I do here in this meeting in a way that maybe I haven't spoken yet, because there's an aspect of veganism that seems to pass most people by, especially most vegans, because most vegans think it has to do with not harming animals, which it does. But there's a deeper thing. There's a deeper thing. And for me, my vegan activism is in helping people to get in touch with that which will help them to wake up the truth in themselves. And when that is done, to me, that's as deep as any act of compassion can be, like to not harm other beings. Yes, that's compassionate. But what about it to take a step further and help people to become proactive about their own humanity, and how they can bring that forth in the world, and touch people in ways where it's not like you're sitting there, trying to separate, because anytime you say an ism or I'm one of these, you've separated yourself from everything else. So to me, the essential thread that brings us all together and brings all our skills together is one where every form of life, including human, and it's we humans that can make the difference. So if we put all our energy as humans without working on ourselves first into helping animals or doing things, we're going to make a lot of mistakes. We're going to, and ultimately waste a lot of time and find out that there's a lot of ways we're doing things to get the message out that aren't really impacting people very well. But if we take a step back and come into our nature and find out who we are, then one of the first things we're going to discover is, well, if somebody came to me, how would I like to have that idea introduced to me? Maybe it's with a beautiful vegan meal. And maybe a conversation that is like, that there was no harm done to any living beings, and keep it simple in the first meeting and not go into details about what happens to animals or anything. Just be very respectful, and then the next time maybe just open it up a little more. I mean, that's how I'd like to be taken into it. I don't want that stuff slammed down my throat. If that happened to me, I would have probably had a hard time. I might have become vegan anyway because I understand the point of true peace and what that means on a cellular level. That if you don't eat violence, then you are truly peaceful, because it's not in your chemistry. And that's, I mean, as anybody knows, if you eat violence, it's the root cause of all war and abuse and everything else, because it's in your chemistry. And people who aren't aware, that chemistry is going to rule their actions. The more you wake up, yes, the more choice you have in the actions you choose. But at the same time, you still have to go through the feeling experiences of eating violence and not acting on it. But if you're going to eat meat, you're going to feel that stuff. So these are some of the essential threads of how I've brought my skills from a deep meditative background and martial arts as a path of Taoist alchemy, more so than a way to, defend myself. Yes, in the early years, maybe so. But as I went deeper, I found it was a very profound system of self-discovery. So bringing that into the vegan world, I found that probably one of the most powerful things I can do, and it transcends even the sense that you have to be vegan to be in this meeting. You just have to be open and come to the meeting. At some point, if it touches you in the right way and you become vegan out of a lovingness and not any sense of anybody pressuring you or forcing you, then I bless that you become vegan. If it's any other way, then stick with what you have, because you're probably going to be a more loving person to yourself and everybody else until you come to the true root of what peacefulness means to you, and a deep understanding of how that empowers your actions on very, very, very subtle levels, all the way down to the most subtle level. And that and one of the easiest ways to align with peace totally and bring true peace to this planet, which we all want, we all are clear, I think, every person on this planet, I don't care who you are or how you get your job done, I think peace is the number one thing we'd all like to see, because it doesn't exist. And the first real step in doing that is to, in your actions, do things that only support that peacefulness. So that's my way of sharing my mastery of what I've learned in my life in this particular arena, in a way that can have, how shall I say, a multi-dimensional impact. That not just on our actions, but on and we humans are also part of that vegan. We have to treat ourselves in the, to me, a true vegan means to treat my other humans as fellow Buddhas, as the highest thing that a human can be. That's what I created in this space, that we all wake up into the Siddha together and act like Buddhists, at least just for the time that we're in the Siddha in this space. So to me, that's the true essence of veganism, is I offer the best I can to every species to the extent of their ability to receive. And like what you're doing with the cat right now, I don't know, the cat, a good petting, and some love. I don't, cats naturally meditate, and other animals do different things. And so what would a world be like where all our skills were used to bring out and share and create a space where every being we touch is benefited as much as they could be benefited? And that's the kind of world I want to create. And so to me, the deepest essence as it applies to humans of veganism is sharing this kind of a space where we can all get in touch with our Buddha nature. And because from there, everything's going to be right, because anything done with awareness is, my teacher had a beautiful way of saying, describing what sin was. He said, sin is not what the Christianity and all that's about, good and bad. That's all subjective and based on where you come from and what your opinions are. Anything done with awareness is without sin. And the only time sin comes in is when you do things without awareness, because it's only without awareness that you can harm another. That's the only possible way. With total awareness, you can't harm another. If you're truly totally aware, there's no way. Because then you would feel what you're doing to that other as if it was happening to yourself. And who would want to do to themselves if they're aware? That eliminates the possibility of doing that. So that's just a little way to, I would like to demonstrate or share the essential thread of the mastery that I've developed over the years and bring it into this space, and how I use this space to support veganism. And maybe it's a more subtle way. Maybe a lot of vegans out there would not necessarily agree with the way I'm going about it. But then again, I have very powerful vegan activists that are out there shaking the world, and they come here and they love it. So go figure. But I think it truly is a very deep and necessary support of us humans, that us humans are included in the veganism, because we humans in general don't treat each other very loving either. So that's what I'll say about that.
So that was the Siddha.
Yes, that was the Siddha. And it's about taking the essentialness of all your gifts, and then being able to take it into fields that, to be able to take it into fields, the essence of whatever your skills are, and apply it in new areas, and flower, so it flowers into many different dimensions. That's the Siddha that's what happens with your skill. It flowers. It exfoliates into many other fields of possibility. And that's what I was describing when I was doing it. My particular version of it in this particular meeting. So to keep it very present and relevant. So yes, it is.
If no one else wants to go, I can go ahead. I'm always full of information.
I would actually like to go while I've got a train of thought. That's okay.
Please do.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So what I'm seeing with like moving into the Siddha is because I kind of started out with this thread of my music and how there's slowly developed this indifference inside of me toward my music and my art, kind of unsure of how to value that, or what the value is. It's been unclear, and so I've left myself unclear on it, so as to avoid, I guess, coming to an unpleasant conclusion. But then I feel like my ability, my versatility to accept all behavior of others, really, like it, I feel like that ability really opens my heart to other people. And yet I think when I actually allow myself to receive that same level of acceptance, I find that it's there. And then when I can enter into a space of my own mastery, I guess, where when I'm making music, I'm not judging myself. I'm not indifferent towards what I'm doing. I just like radically accept everything that I do, and every mistake is just like a step on the path, and I notice it's then and there where I seem to make real progress and go to places that I otherwise couldn't have gone if I was trying to determine what was valuable, what was not valuable, and I noticed that too in like conversations with people as well, and any artful pursuit. And I mean, life itself could be considered just an artful pursuit. And more often than not, it's me who's getting in the way of any sort of mastery in any craft or any conversation or interaction with the world. It's this belief that there's only some things that I can do that are worthy of acceptance. And yeah, when I am accepting myself, I feel like I'm on the road to mastery, at least. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Evan. That was nice. And it brought up another point I'd like to make clear to help those that wish to apply these teachings to their life, is that there's a couple different ways we can go into a siddha. And one way that I've tended to do up until maybe the last few meetings is just to get into the siddha space and kind of emanate the siddha space. But another way is to go into the siddha space and then turn around and look back at the world, and from the siddha space start to use the siddha to unravel the wisdom about something that you do with the world, like what Evan kind of just did and what I kind of did, and what we're kind of doing tonight more, because we're focusing more on a skill. And a skill, when we get into a skill, it's more about what we can do with the skill. So the siddha itself is kind of defining how we do it tonight, because to go in and just be a perfect skill would, at the siddha level here, that's easier to do if you're going into something like compassion or universal love or unity or something. Then you can get into that space and emanate, and we can all connect into it. But I think tonight it's a good thing to see that sometimes even the way the siddha is related to and where we come from it, and this is a really good one to kind of step into the siddha space and then use that skill to peer into the world and describe how your skillfulness in relating to the world. So I just wanted to bring that out, because that's the kind of thread we're all weaving tonight with this siddha. So I just want to make sure I call that out, so that it helps as a descriptor of how the siddha is moving through the collective this evening.
Okay, I waited. So, hello. So how have I had some mastery? I mean, when you look at the 7-year cycles, I've had a few of them, and so I've come to a maturity through all my kind of chaotic learning through adventure and independence and freedom that I was gifted from my childhood life. And I was always interested in experience and knowledge about experience. So I was very much into the world since I was a kid, and decided to go on adventures for experience so that I could bring back the elixir on the hero's journey. I somehow had that idea already when I was like 9 years old or something like that. So I kind of set that as a tone of learning a lot of aspects, and also flowing, because I was needed to pay for my school and I paid for my way for everything after 14. So it was always, I would have the skills of work, and lucky for me, I always had really interesting work that was involved with like media. I worked in libraries and bookstores when I was in high school, and just when I was first going to college, and then I ended up in the technology and media business while putting myself through undergrad. And then that ended up being adventures in healing and going to explore the world of, you know, the outer currents, on the land, sustainability, different kinds of diets. I've tried like every diet you can imagine that is going on right now, and recognizing how it operates in my body and how I feel. So everything that on all the experience I've done like analysis of what my experience was, where I went with it, because I come from a scientific and artistic family. So, you know, I had the science and the art side. And just today, I mean, I've talked, right now I'm doing a lot of healing still on the physical level, because even though I was so curious about the world, the most important thing for me was to heal my body, but due to the indifference and the diffusion and scattering and fragmentation of my own authority and sovereign experience, it took me a long time to get there through my adventures. I was hoping I would find it, but I had to very much start focusing my adventures on exactly what I wanted, and the supreme focus is on healing and on internal bliss, which is my vocation and my life's work. And I had visions of this when I was a kid, so I kind of thought it would be easy going and I would just come across it, but really I had to make deep decisions like, no, this is what I'm about, these are my standards, and this is how I live and how I master my life. So I carry all these skills from the adventures and then bring it into the healing of my body and the healing of the species through consciousness and awareness of our internal environment. And also I'm my own guinea pig of how I can shapeshift my internal environment and my physical body, even after several 7-year adventure cycles. I'm on a new adventure cycle of cellular reformation through epigenetics and meditation, focus, consciousness, purity, love. And today I had a really wonderful meditation after our group call this morning, and then before this and before another call. And due to what happened to me in some traumatic experiences where my body was taken over as when it shouldn't have been, I was also indifferent and diffused about my own sensuality. And so today I matched my sensuality with love, because I struggled with the ability to actually pair the two because of what had happened. So for me, sensuality meant abuse and attack and taking over, and not love. So but then I would always cry, oh, I want love, and you know, and I just couldn't match the two because they were coded in my body in a different way. So today I successfully paired in what wires together, what fires together wires together, so is the neurobiological saying. So I fired love and sensuality together today, and that was a success into from the shadow into the heart, and now into the illumination of how that could heal my body into the deeper spaces with all the mastery of knowledge that I've been carrying. Thank you. I'm done.
I love the way you ended that, because it went right into the being, right into the belly. That's how you know you hit the note on the Siddha. It just goes into this incredibly exquisite play. I call it exquisite turn of events, right down into the depths of your belly, into the depths of your being. So that was really beautiful how you energetically captured the Siddhic expression. Because like I say, so much in what we say, although some of us are really good at saying stuff. In fact, every one of us are, when we get behind what we say, it comes out very beautiful. But it's that essence of each note. So that was, I just want to call that out, because if you were really present when Denise was speaking right at the end, it would take you right into where the Siddhas live in us, which is the deep lower belly, where we connect with the universal life force. So thank you, Denise.
I can go. I'm feeling into limitation and dissatisfaction, which I've been feeling and experiencing just as I've gone through the past couple of days. And every time that happens, there's a possibility of transcendence and breakthrough. And yeah, it's something about generalities, speaking in generalities, but then also discovering the uniqueness of my life and accepting that. Because part of the indifference or the diffusion of attention is around that, the rejection of my own self's uniqueness, or a rejection of my own self's natural ability, not wanting it, maybe seeing it, but like, no, that's not it. I'd rather have this other thing, or I'd rather not. And so what is that uniqueness? And part of it, is I relate so deeply with, the reflections of my interactions. It's like the oneness and the sense of oneness is so deeply connected or relatable that I diffuse once again there. So then, yeah, connecting to the heart and the joy, and having that kind of electrify my cells and being. It lights, there's an aspect of being lit up. And this is even through, I guess, different body discomforts. There's things in my digestion and body that, with diet, I work on in certain ways, but I don't know, maybe it's through the particular process that I got to get through, or there's some deeper intergenerational genetic thing to overcome, or I don't know. But there's also, even if there is some sort of thing like that, there is a slight shift that can happen, that energetically, then I feel fully aligned, and the light flows in all the channels, and I feel like I'm stepping into that mastery. And to consciously acknowledge that and own that in a space is important to me. I'm finding, to as a sense of self, as a sense of identity, as a sense of being in the world. So then that claim empowers it, and ideally clarifies the movement or the guidance towards what to do next. With joy and love.
I like what you're doing there, Sean. I don't know if you're done, but you're in a silence. So
There's one more thing that it's like come up.
Okay.
There's an idea about fairness that has been really emerging the past, I don't know, day or two. And just this feeling of like, what's fair? Is something fair or it's not fair? And that has just emerged from from my cells. It's almost like something that has been kept within me, and from and that also ties to my ability to breathe and my lungs, and like the release of maybe sadness or anger, but and that that's something that I feel like presencing, like the fairness or the justice and what even that means, so that I can just claim the essential thread of unity and with all of humanity, and my place within that constellation. So just bringing that in here as an explorative addition. So.
Thank you, Sean. You got it right at the end there. I love how it's almost like when we get to the Siddha, it just takes over and everybody just sort of finds their own way to it. And I felt a beautiful drop into the being at the end of what you did. Similar, but not the same as I felt it with Denise. But each one landed right in the same place and lit up the being. So that was beautiful. You at the end there, you just fell right into the Siddhic centering. So thank you. Well, Nancy, is there anything you'd like to share? I'll bring up the.
Hi.
So,
I'm just getting ready to leave my friend's house, and so I'm just cleaning up and tidying up. So I'm really in listening mode right now. So I'll just keep listening. Thanks.
Okay, cool. We're pretty much at the what I'd like to do tonight to end this meeting is I think I'd like each of us to give a closing tonight, which is different than normal. One of us gives a closing, and I'll start. And what I want to say tonight, in kind of synergetically synthesizing all of what's gone tonight, I was getting a vision here in the Siddhic space where I see each of us has been, in a way, genetically configured in a very absolutely unique way when the universal life force came into our being and created us. And we first entered into existence as a presence. And there's such an absolutely unique signature that no other being in existence has, but each one of us, absolutely unique stamp from the universal life force that has a certain it is truly what our essential thread is, because it's the essential thread that is the identity of the universal life force as it is expressed through us, each one of us. So that's our true. I think at the ultimate level of this particular life code is that we become that light signature, and that we literally become an absolutely unique skill, if you want to call it that, but it's much deeper than that because it's multidimensional and it's versatile and it's user-friendly across every field. So really the ultimate thing to discover is the essential thread of our own unique genetic illumination, if you like. Because then the skill of being ourselves transcends any particular use of that skill in any particular environment. And then we can become a true a benefit into any situation. So that's my way of synthesizing and synergizing this meeting tonight, and that's my contribution to closing the meeting space. So who else would like to? We're all going to close tonight, so that's my closing. Who would like to go next and share their synergetic synthesis in a closing statement?
I'll share. So for me, this meeting has been a real reminder of, like the power of our individual attention, and how each of us as individuals, our attention is able to accomplish different things when it's focused in and actually it's applied where it naturally wants to be applied. When we listen to our like truer inclinations, and I think that out of that and out of focusing and coming together in solidarity as well, to recognize the struggle that we all face to concentrate our energy and our attention to where it's meant to be. When we come together and we share in that, I think it just it puts us all on this track to fulfilling and fully occupying our space in this reality. We're just it like allows us to fill up more corners and little nooks and crannies when we come together, and when we overlap our experiences and our shortcomings. It makes the world bigger, and I think we see our own essence connection to the essence of all things, and in that experience we expand because of it. I think that is my contribution.
Okay, I'll say something. So yeah, this aspect of essences, I see that as each of us being a unique individual that holds keys in sacred manners, then we can join these keys in invisible structures of energy lines and conduits where we intersect on these values or these essences that we value and that have sacred meaning and illuminated or gifted meaning to us as we evolve into that space out of the shadow. The earth and all of its inhabitants and our creations and all of our beingness is going to be living in so much more harmonic spaces together, because we will resonate with our innate inner selves, and thus will resonate with the innate inner selves of others, because we are of the same physics in the same world at the same time. And when we meet in these essences that we value, that we truly value, that isn't based on some authoritative or fake or inauthentic or non-sovereign value, we can just become more sovereign, authentic, and an agency of change that acts in ways that values our values and connects with the values of others that way. And I see that as an essence of light connecting to an essence of light as mapped in our energy bodies. And it's a beautiful movement and experience of humanity that we're realizing now. Thank you.
I can go next. Something that you said that really like stuck with me, like, you know, flypaper, zap. And it was about having all of our interactions, I'm paraphrasing here, just bring, you know, love and light into the world. And, you know, everything we do, how life could really be like that for everyone. As I feel like we've all grown up in, despite the fact white privilege, we've still grown up in a world that seems to be operating on crisis a lot of the time. You know, relationships don't work out, people don't get along, even infighting and among vegans, and so many, seems like one horrible thing after another, piled on top of another, piled on top of another. And yet we somehow know that none of that is really our true nature and how we've been created, you know, as beings of light and love. And what would life look like? I mean, have we become addicted to violence? And I think to a certain extent we have been. And so, you know, entering this whole paradigm shift is, even though it's in our true nature, I think people have a sense of feeling like lost, like, you know, our bearings are lost. If our bearings have always been, you know, stormy, choppy seas, and all of a sudden we come into this area where it's light and it's a beautiful day, people can kind of feel lost. You know, like what do I do now? What do I think now? And yet that's where I think the real richness in life begins, when we're not in defensive mode or fighting mode. And that's, you know, really where life begins. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Mm. So, building off that, crisis and Christed and addicted to violence, maybe violet, and richness of life. Power and our light. Relaxing into our wholeness. Yeah, smiles.